Okay. So, good evening, everyone. We'll be starting with chapter 5 of Science NCERT class 10th, that is life processes. So, how do we differentiate between any organism that is live or not live? So, there are a few characteristics that on the basis of which we differentiate between something that is live or not live. So, first of all, that could be movement, any sort of movement. But movement cannot be the only characteristics that define the living organism, right? So another thing that we consider is breathing. Okay, so breathing can be another characteristic of living organism or something that is alive. But there are plants that do not inhale or exhale, but they are also live. So then there comes the criteria of another characteristic of defining life, which could be color. So we generally say that the plant which possesses a green color is life or possess life. Okay, but that is not the whole criteria because a few plants have different pigment which is either brown in color or red in color. So we cannot also define the life or living thing on the basis of color. Then another thing came into this is growth. So growth is not a very visible thing because we cannot observe growth in plants very frequently because plants grow at a very slow rate. So growth cannot be also used as a indicator of indicating whether it is live or not, alive or not, right? So what we can use to indicate something that is alive, so things that indicate our status of life can be termed as life processes. So anything, any organism that is undergoing these life processes is considered life. Okay, so there can be different type of organisms. Suppose organisms can be unicellular or multicellular, right? Okay, so how do we know that unicellular organism is live or that multicellular organism is live? Okay, so there is a definite structure in all the organisms of their composition. Suppose all the organisms are made up of cells, right? Okay, then a group of cells help in the building up of tissues. Then tissues forms organs. Then organ system is formed, and further whole organism is formed. Okay, so these cells or these tissues or these organs or organ system need continuous repair because they do get damaged in the sustaining of life. Okay, so they need repair, and for repair we need energy, and energy we get from food. right? So we are getting energy from food. We are humans. We can directly consume food. We can engulf the food with the help of hands and taking it into the mouth. But there are organisms, suppose plants or microorganisms, that do not have definite organs or organ systems to intake food. So how do they consume food? So for this, uh, under the class of nutrition, which is a parameter of indicating life. So we can categorize nutrition as autotrophic and heterotrophic. Okay. So for the life processes, we need energy. We are getting energy from food, and for food, we have in two forms: autotrophs and heterotrophs. Two types of organisms, autotrophs and heterotrophs, and their particular mode of taking nutrition is referred to as autotrophic or heterotrophic, right? So for autotrophs are the organisms which make up their own food, right? They are making up their own food, and the food that they are intaking is in the form of carbon dioxide and water. They are taking up inorganic materials in the form of carbon dioxide and water, right? For example, plants. Okay, so plants are making their own food, and we are referring that type of nutrition as autotrophic nutrition. Okay, so how do plants make their own food? By the process that we all know, photosynthesis, right? So what happens in photosynthesis? There is CO2 and H2O, and in the presence of sunlight and chlorophyll, it is converted into glucose, that is T6H12O6, and oxygen. To balance that out, there would be 6 molecules of oxygen, 12 molecules of water, then 6 molecules of oxygen. Okay, so this is the process of photosynthesis. We are absorbing the light energy in the presence of chlorophyll. Okay, chlorophyll is present in the chloroplast of leaves, green leaves. Okay, chlorophyll is the green pigment, we all know. Then after this absorption of light, we are converting this light energy into chemical energy by splitting the water molecules and by splitting the water molecules into carbon dioxide, by splitting the water molecules into hydrogen and oxygen. And further, the reduction of CO2 is taking place into C6H12O6. Okay, here the reduction processes take place. Okay, so now we know that the photosynthesis is taking place in the plants. It is a continuous process, but there are plants which, suppose they are in deserts. There are plants that take up CO2 in night and store it. Okay. So they are storing the captured CO2 in the night, and then further when the daylight comes, in the presence of sunlight, it is further converted into starch or carbohydrate or what we call it C6H12O6. Okay, so the basic principle behind this process is that CO2 and H2O are getting converted into carbohydrates. Okay, carbohydrates are not used immediately because, for example, there are autumn seasons when trees do not have a single leaf, but still they are alive. Whenever spring comes, they leaves come again. So the carbohydrates, these carbohydrates which they produced or stored earlier in other seasons, these are not immediately consumed or used. These are converted into starch, and starch is stored in the plant tissues that we usually call xylem and phloem. Okay, and this further serves as an internal energy resource. Whenever the energy is required, starch is taken up and energy is produced. Right? So this was autotrophic nutrition. Right? So talking about a leaf. Suppose this is a leaf. Okay, and we cut it from here. Then we will have a cross-sectional view of this particular leaf. Okay, so at this particular place, we can see the xylem and phloem. Okay, this is lamina or blade, leaf blade, right? These are the xylem and phloem. Then further we have veins. These are veins, right? And xylem and phloem, we usually call them as vascular bundles. All the water and nutrients are supplied to the leaves through these vascular bundles. And further, there is chloroplast. This we call as midrib. Okay, so there could be vascular bundles here as well, here as well, here as well. So there are vascular bundles. Okay, so when we analyze a plant cell under microscope, it would appear like this. Okay, so at the top, it would have a waxy layer, right? Then below it, there would be epidermis, epidermis. Then further, these are the cells which contain chloroplast. Chloroplast, we all know it is the green pigment. So this is chloroplast, right? Then below this, there are another cells which we usually call guard cells. Guard cells. These guard cells contain stomata that we further discuss in another diagram. And then there is lower epidermis, right? So this was the chloroplast, right? This was the chloroplast. Okay. So when we discuss the structure of stomata, it looks somewhat like this, bean shaped. Okay. These bean shaped cells are guard cells and further covered by another cells. Okay. So these are the guard cells and these guard cells contain chloroplast. This is chloroplast, right? And here is well chloroplast, right? This is the stomatal pore, right? So we already discussed the intake of CO2 or the formation of oxygen. So we all know that gaseous exchange is taking place. That plants require CO2, which is present in the atmosphere. Then, after the process of photosynthesis, they produce oxygen, which is further released back into the atmosphere. So, the gaseous exchange is taking place. The plants are intaking carbon dioxide and exhaling oxygen. So, this gaseous exchange takes place in the because of this stomatal pore or stomata. Stomata get open or closed with time whenever there is gaseous exchanges taking place. So the stomata is open. And how does it get open? Because there is not just stomata, gaseous exchange, but it also contain water. So water loss also take place because of stomata. So stomata has two functions. First is gaseous exchange and second is loss of water that we usually call transpiration. Okay, so when the stomata is open, so these guards, these contain the water and they get swelled up because of the filling up of water and further opening of stomata take place. When gaseous exchange is over, these guard cells come back to their shape again and water loss takes place. Okay, that we call transpiration, right? Okay, so stomata, we know the tiny pores that are present on the surface of the leaves. The So stomata is guiding, guard cells are guiding the opening and closing of stomata as per the requirement of CO2. Okay, so next is, so the plants are getting CO2 from the stomata opening and closing, right? Water it is getting from the soil. Okay, soil is providing water. Other than that, other important nutrients such as potassium, phosphorus, nitrogen, magnesium, or iron. These are also provided through soil. So now we know about autotrophic nutrition. So Let's move further towards heterotrophic nutrition, mode of nutrition. Heterotrophic, right? So, we know heterotrophs are the organisms that make up their own food, right? And that food is quite complex, right? The breaking down of that particular type of complex food material is required to release energy into the body of that particular organism. So, on the basis of the breakdown of the food that is taking place, we divide these animals into three categories, two categories mainly. First is the breakdown is taking place outside the body of the organism, right? So, how would the breakdown of food material or complex food material take place outside the body? So, for example, we have fungi. Okay, what does it do? It just spread over bread and it secretes some substances over the surface of bread. Then it further starts to degrade into simpler materials which fungi can consume. Okay, then further, another category of organism would be those in which the breakdown is taking place inside the body, right? So these include many animals, humans as well. So these are mainly multicellular organisms, right? These are basically the multicellular organisms which can intake the whole material and break it down inside the body. Then further, there is another type of organisms that take the nutrition from another plant or another animal. So there is another class that we call as parasites. Right? Parasites. So they usually feed on the body of another plant or animal. Right? So this is it about the breaking down of food. So breaking down happens after the intake. So how does the organism intake that food? So for example, in unicellular organisms, how does the intake of food take place? Suppose this is an amoeba. This is the nucleus. Okay. This is the chloroplast. And this is the food. Okay, so how would the amoeba engulf it? So it would start to grow in that particular direction where the food is present, right? And with the time, it will consume it, and there is no food. Okay. Furthermore, there are organisms like penicillium. Okay. Suppose this is. So there are two finger-like projection. These finger-like projections. So they use these finger-like projection in their body to engulf food. Other than that, talking about multicellular organisms, which include humans. So we have certain systems. Okay. So we have certain systems to engulf food and to intake food. Further, food is transported through different mediums. So we'll discuss that. So in humans, one specific organ is there which we term as alimentary canal. Okay. We have alimentary canal which starts from the mouth and ends at anus, covering esophagus, then further our stomach, small intestine, large intestine, etc. Okay, so when we engulf food, we have teeth to chew the food and make its texture which can be swallowed easily because there is a pipe which cannot engulf hard materials. So to soften down it and to improve its texture, we have teeth which break down the food into smaller substances or smaller particles, right? Further, one more thing is saliva. Saliva is the water-like substance that is present in our mouth whenever we see our favorite dish, our mouth starts to get water. So that is saliva. So saliva contains different enzymes. Salivary enzyme which helps in the breaking down of sugars. So the food that we are intaking is in the form of starch, right? Okay. So starch, that salivary enzyme is converting that starch into simple sugars. Okay. Salivary enzyme is salivary. Name of the enzyme is salivary amylase. Salivary amylase is performing the function of breaking down the complex starch or complex food material into simple sugars, which are further taken up to the food pipe, which is also known as esophagus. So this food pipe, suppose this is our nose, this is our mouth, and we are swallowing the food. Okay. So this is the esophagus. Okay. So these linings continuously contract in order to engulf that food. okay, and push that food forward, right? Then further with the food canal, there comes stomach. So this is our stomach, okay. So this is stomach, food comes here and it is stored. With the storage of food, stomach has three secretions, major secretions. First is hydrochloric acid, okay. Then second is pepsin, and third is mucus, okay. So the HCl, hydrochloric acid, is produced by gastric glands in order to digest the food that is stored in the stomach, okay. Furthermore, this HCl facilitates the action of pepsin, and pepsin, what does the pepsin do? It digests the proteins. Okay, it helps in the digestion of proteins. Furthermore, mucus is released by the of stomach, walls of stomach to prevent degradation or harm to the walls of stomach because of the presence of HCl. Because HCl is highly acidic. Okay, so it can harm the lining of stomach or it can cause further problems. So mucus is really secreted by the walls of stomach to prevent any type of degradation. Further, there is pincher muscle over here, and it helps in the release of food into the small intestine in smaller portion. Suppose this is the small intestine. So next organ is the small intestine, which is termed as a small intestine, but it is the largest organ of the whole alimentary canal. Okay, so the food comes here by crossing the sphincter muscle. Okay, then the food is released in small parts for digestion. So the size of the food depends on what the sorry. So the size of small intestine depends on what the organism is eating. Suppose there is a cow. Okay, what does cow eat? Grass, and grass is rich in cellulose, right? Cellulose takes so much time to get digested. So the small intestine of cow is large. Okay. And suppose there is another animal or organism, lion. What does lion eat? It feeds on meat. Meat can be easily digested. So the small intestine of lions are quite shorter. Okay. So it receives sections from stomach. Then further, this small intestine also gets secretions. Secretions in the form of bile juices or okay. So it is getting three type of secretions. First is bile juice. First is bile juice. Okay. Bile juice, which is secreted by liver. Second is pancreatic juice. which is secreted by pancreas. Then further, it also have intestinal secretions, which are secreted by the walls of intestine. Okay, so the function of bile juice. So bile juice helps, first of all, the food which is coming out from the stomach is coming out from acidic medium. So to neutralize it and to make that particular food material alkaline. So bile juice serves the function of making it alkaline or balancing the pH of that particular material. Other than that, bile juice helps in the digestion of fats, right? Furthermore, the pancreatic juice, which is secreted by the pancreas, it contains enzymes like trypsin. Okay, what does it do? Trypsin is helping in the digestion of proteins. Next, we have lipase enzyme. Lipase helps in the breaking down or emulsification of fats or lipids. Okay. Then the third secretion we have from intestinal glands, intestinal walls, that is intestinal juice. So it releases few enzymes that helps in serving three functions. Okay, so the proteins that are present in the remaining undigested food, these proteins are converted into amino acids. Further, carbohydrates are converted into glucose, and the other fats are converted into glycerol or fatty acid. Okay, other than that, in this, suppose this is our small intestine. So these walls have some finger-like projections which are termed as villi. So these finger-like projections, which we usually call villi, these are supplied with blood vessels. So the digested food which come across this is released into the blood. Okay. Then further blood serves the function of circulating these digested foods or proteins, carbohydrates, sugars into various organs. Okay, so further, then energy is obtained by respiration, other process. There are several other processes associated with transportation, exchange, and respiration. So the digested food particles are diffused through blood, and the undigested food particles comes to the large intestine. So this is large intestine. In the large intestine, there is a thing that we usually called absorption of excess water. Okay, so large intestine serves the function of absorption of excess water. So all the unabsorbed food is further sent to large intestine, then large intestinal walls absorb more water. Then further, the rest is removed from the body through anus. There is also another wall type structure that we call NS sphincter. Sphincter. Okay, so this was it about heterotrophic nutrition or heterotrophic mode of nutrition. So we are consuming this food or nutrition for growth or development, right? Which further indicates life, right? Anything that have life do possess these certain characteristics. One of which we discussed was nutrition. Another process is could be respiration, as we are taking up the food in the form of nutrition. So there would be transportation of this, not in heterotrophic organisms only, but in autotrophic organisms also. The food or the nutrients are transported across the whole organism by the vessels or vascular bundles that we usually call xylem and phloem. So in humans, the this function is served by blood, which absorbs or take up all the absorbed or digested food to various organisms through diffusion at the surface of villi. Okay. Furthermore, to break down these food and to obtain energy, we do require oxygen. Oxygen is required. Why? Because oxygen helps in oxidation and reduction, which are the two chemical reactions that take place for the digestion of food. And how are we getting the oxygen? We are breathing. So we are breathing the oxygen, inhaling the oxygen, exhaling the CO2, which is further produced by various activities, etc. Okay, so the multicellular organisms, all the cells are directly not in contact with the surroundings. So we take up oxygen through lungs, and then these lungs provide oxygen to all the other organs of the body through blood again. So we can consider blood as mode of transport, right? So now here we know that oxygen is required for the breaking down of this food which we have digested in the form of glucose or amino acids or glycerol. So this is further broken down into the form of energy with the help of oxygen, which further facilitates oxidation or reduction reactions. Okay. Then, other than that, one more process that adds up to life is excretion also. Because there would be excretion of these undigested food materials, right? Excretion of undigested or unwanted material, right? So, furthermore, in this chapter, we are going to discuss about respiration, transportation, and excretion. That is it for today. Thank you.